Hello, hi. This is Anthony Padone for a series called SQL in 10 Minutes, or SQL ITM. And today we're going to discuss managed instances, a managed instance and a managed instance pools. Let's get started right away. Great. Oh, start the timer within 10 minutes. Okay, go. So let's see here. We'll look at managed instance first. We have two categories for that. We have managed instance concepts and how to create a managed instance. Let's start the concepts. So we'll bring that guy up, and we'll expand it a couple times. And don't forget, you can always download these screens and study them. And that's where the learning takes place, after you download these and do study them if you can. So this is right from Microsoft. As you can see, Azure SQL is broken down into Azure SQL Managed Instance, which is PaaS, and Azure SQL Database, which is also PaaS. It's called a easy shift and lift, and we know nothing is that easy, but technically you do kind of lift up your current on-prem stuff and drop it into the managed instance, and it kind of takes it from there. But again, there's a lot of caveats with that. As you can see here, managed instance, lift and shift, on-prem, blah blah blah. And it preserves all the PaaS capabilities. So therefore, you have all the managed capabilities that the PaaS has to offer that you don't get in an IaaS setup. And that's why they really did this one. We have a number of boxes here. Let's look at a couple of these guys. As you see, these boxes are independent. They're not connected to anything. They don't have any associations. And I have them stereotyped as good to know, good to know, good to know. So replacements. If you're getting into the Azure world, this is good to know. I kind of believe this, that the SSIS and SSRS should be replaced and can be replaced by the Azure Data Factory and Power BI. That just kind of makes sense. Another good to know, the management operations for managed instances. Obviously, you can deploy a new instance. You can update the properties of the new instance, and you can delete the instances. So you can create them, delete them, and maintain them. Update them, maintain them. Another good to know is the service tier. We talked about service tier in Azure databases. Essentially, right now at this particular time, managed instance only supports two service tiers called general purpose and business critical. And we won't get into that, but do research that service tier. The V model, the V core models, as you can see, are standard premium and premium series memory optimized. And they also flow into the creation of a managed instance and managed instance pool. And the two attributes will be the vCore. You set the count of the vCores, how many memory virtual logical CPUs you need and want. And the attribute compute generation, which is this basically set up here, which defines the logical CPUs, the kind, the structure of them, and the associated RAM to that. So that's the concepts behind that. Let's get out of this one and get into how to create. I find it's very, very helpful if you start working with PowerShell, AZ modules specifically. So this is a breakdown of how to create a managed instance using PowerShell. There's always the obligatory setup of subscriptions and resource groups, and so that's out of the way. You do that. Next, you set up a virtual network, subnetworks, the network security groups, routing tables, credentials. So that's kind of out of the way too, but it's necessary for the creation of the managed instance. The heart and soul, though, is right here, the new AZ SQL instance. So you're creating the managed instance right here. And as you can see, I highlighted some things. The storage size in gigabytes. So you specify the storage size. You specify the vCores or the counts of how many virtual CPUs you want. The addition, which comes down to the service tier. And then the compute generation is the V model here of the CPU itself, the structure of that. Once you create the instance, Then you create a database, and it's attached to the instance. And it's simple. It's kind of simple as that, but there's a lot of overhead and understanding of how to monitor and really keep this thing functional where you want it. So that's the structure as far as Azure. So do follow the code flow, because as you can see here, there's certain things that have to be done, things that need to be done for the virtual, then the creation of the instance and the creation of the database. Each one flows into the next. Let's get into the managed instance pool. It's similar, but it basically look at the concept real quick. You're creating a pool that houses the resources, and the instances share that pool of resources. So it's a good way, as I put here, it's a good way to migrate smaller SQL instances into the cloud at scale. Again, you have to set up a VNet, which is subnet, and then you can set up the virtual clusters. This cluster 1 and cluster 2 we've defined here. Quickly, let's go over that. As you can see, this is a container right here, which is the VNet. The VNet then contains 2 separate clusters. Each cluster is set up a little differently. This has a pool. This is a pool of instances, and then we have instances which inside the pool. And as you can see, the instances share the defined resources of the pool. Here we have 2 instances that they are in their own pool. They have their own resources, and they do not share. They consume their own resources. So that's the idea of the pool instance. Do study this, and you can get back to that later. Also, here's how you create it in SQL, or rather, I'm sorry, PowerShell. And I really think it's very important to understand how to use AZ modules here. We'll talk about it real quickly, but you can see the flow of it. You set up your VNet, your subnet. That's done. Then that sort of feeds into the instance pool. You create an instance pool. Here's this where you define the resources as we did in the prior, but now the pool houses the resources, the vCore. How many CPUs do you want? The addition, which is the service tier, the compute generation, the CPU types, and then the memory attached to that. So that's the instance pool. Then you create, as you can see, attach instances to the pool. Now you create these separate instances, and then they feed off the pool. So this instance here, we basically have a name for it, and we're going to use 2 vCores from the pool, okay? And we're going to use a storage size of this. Another instance, we're going to use 4 vCores from the pool, and assign, as you can see, assign the size of it. Then you create a database and attach the database to the pool. To the instance rather, and the instance is attached to the pool, and the pool defines the resources. So those instances are sharing the resources as far as the compute process. And that's a way of course, saving money. It's a way of consolidating certain things. It's a way of having smaller instances grouped together. You don't have to create separate instances of that. And scale-wise, it's a good way of handling. So that kind of wraps it up for the managed instance and the managed instance pool. As always, the learning takes place from downloading these diagrams and studying them. Okay, so you can go back to the main entry, download the diagram, study them, and learn about the managed instance. Again, this structures it out. It gives you the flow and how the thing is conceptualized and created. That's it, and we have 2 minutes to spare, and I thank you very much, and stay tuned for the next presentation. Thank you. Bye-bye.